Welcome to the trial site here on Cove Island. It's a fabulous crop of maize with Dave Barry here. Dave, if you give us a rundown on the maize crops in 2025 and what kind of year has it been for maize so far?
Yeah, look, I suppose, first of all, look, it's great to be in the trial field, and it's great to be in a trial field this time of the year with everything looking good. It's been an excellent year for maize, I suppose, different to last year in 2024. Lots of crops were sown very, very late. So this year in 2025, look, there was a great opportunity for sowing from kind of 20th of April onwards. And in most cases, people sowed when they wanted to sow it. They sowed it at the time they'd planned to sow it. So in the trial field here, we sowed the crop and we sowed all the plots and the surrounding plots. It was the 8th of May. So ideally, we'd have liked to go maybe a week or 10 days sooner, but it just wasn't possible with work that was going on in springtime. Look, this field, like you see around the countryside, in general in Ireland, the maize crops are excellent. The exception is in some of the later sowings that went on maybe towards the middle of May, that field conditions got a little bit too dry, and then the crop establishment was poor, and in some cases then the availability of nitrogen or fertiliser was a bit difficult because there just wasn't enough water to wash it down.
I've been on the road in Wexford and parts of East Cork, and I've seen crops cut already. So that would tell you it's been an early year, and I suppose talking on varieties, there'll be different harvesting dates depending on varieties that are on the market. So would you give it an example of the different harvesting dates that are possible?
And so look, the harvest has begun, and even look, driving along the road, you can see certain crops that are very mature and then ones that are maybe less mature. And so the sort of different things that impact that are the variety is a really important one, but also things like the site. A really good early site with everything going for it is going to have a more advanced crop and be at a higher maturity level. A crop that was driven on with nitrogen will last longer and will stay, will take a bit more time going through its growth stages. So a crop that's maybe a little bit underfed will come in early as well. But variety, as you say, like sowing date obviously is a key part of when they ripen as well. But the big one that everyone has an influence on every year is picking a variety. And so the crops that are being harvested at the moment in general are the ones that are under plastic, and they're the ones that will come ready for harvest first. And I suppose the beauty of a year like this year is that every crop is going to get to a suitable, correct stage of ripeness to be ready for harvest. Whereas in some years, like even last year, you get to a point in the middle of October where there's no point leaving the crop anymore, and even the crops that are immature and not ready, they just got to be cut. So this year, everything's going to get to the right stage of maturity. At the moment, if you have a medium maturing variety or an earlier maturing variety under plastic, it's going to be ready to harvest really, very soon in the next week or 10 days. And in our trial field here, we have Ambition under plastic just over there, and the Ambition is essentially ready to cut at the moment. Now, we would recommend a variety like Ambition under plastic for someone who actually plans to to harvest early, or where they have a very challenging site and they just want to make sure that they get enough starch produced. But the more mainstream market we're involved in is like Emmeline, which is going to need another couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks before it's actually fully ready for harvest, or maybe another 2 weeks maybe on this site. And like we're on a perfect site here because we're down at sea level. The tide is just down at the end of the field. Okay, we're slightly north facing, but we're kind of flat and it's very sheltered, so it's a really suitable site. So harvest, will be from now until probably the first week of October, and by then I'd say they'll all be done.
I was talking to a few customers this week now, and they were discussing the harvesting of maize in their area, and some of them were kind of saying it wasn't quite ready. They were waiting for the leaves to turn kind of orange. But like, what would be your opinion on that? Would that be too late in some cases, or would you say obviously the cob is probably the main factor? What would you say is the main factor for you if you want to cut a field on a certain day?
So to me, the most important thing is the cob. And we want to get the cob at a sufficient stage of ripeness and maturity, that it has a very high level of starch, but that it's not gone too dry and too hard that might cause problems with digestion in the animal afterwards. Now, ideally, in a perfect world, we want to get the cob at that stage of ripeness, and we actually still want a green plant because we want the nutrition that's in these leaves. Now, if you look at this plant here, like you would, starting out, we expect that there's more than half, maybe 55% of the total dry matter in this full plant is inside in this cob. So about, 55% of the dry material. So I know when you look at the size of this and you look at the size of this, you're saying, what? But that is the case. This is what, in this crop, because we've got very well developed cobs, there's definitely more than half of the total dry matter of what we're going to harvest is in here. And of that then about half of it is starch, or a bit more than half of it is starch, 56, 57%. So that's where we're hoping then to end up with 30, 32, 33% starch in our harvested crop afterwards. Yeah. So I want this at the right stage of maturity. And okay, there's lots of different, I suppose, things people look at. But for me, split the cob in half and take a look at the grains halfway up. And if there's no juice left in them, and I just sprayed Joe with a bit of milky starch onto his coat, but if there's none left, then we're ready. If you get to a stage where they're gone very, very hard, so I can bite that easy. I can squeeze a bit of juice out of it. I'm saying there's another 2 weeks in that. By then, these leaves will start to wilt a little bit. But I prefer if they're green at harvest, providing the crop dry matter itself, providing this is high enough in dry matter. Even if these are green and a bit lush going into the pit, I'm expecting to be in the high 20s in terms of dry matter content when the whole thing is averaged out inside in the pit afterwards. Yeah. So look, certainly with a cob like that, or the cobs that you see on varieties this year, you're going to have real high quality maize, up to 30% starch, or 31 or 32, and you'll be aiming to get up to 28, 29, 30, 31 in dry matter percentage.
It's pretty, yeah, it's great. It's going to be, and another big advantage this year at the moment, I know we can't get ahead of ourselves, but if crops get taken out in the next week or 10 days, less hardship on ground conditions, less compaction, and better chance of a good crop the following year with less compaction.
I suppose the other point, I suppose, just in terms of us being in the trial field, like from a Goldcrop point of view, we have maize trials every year, and the purpose for us is, look, they have a really important purpose. Sometimes we have an open day and we bring people to see it, and that's kind of only part of it. The big purpose for us is we want to screen varieties to find the good ones, to find the ones that have been bred by all the different breeders of maize throughout Europe, and in some cases beyond that, that may work in Ireland. We want to find the best ones for Ireland. And okay, we like last year we had material from, I'd say, maybe 8 or 9 different breeders around Europe. This year it's a little bit less, it's about 6 or 7 breeders. But what we're trying to do is find something that's really good, and when we find it, then we'll submit it into the Department of Agriculture recommended list trial, and it'll go through 3 years there before it can get on a list. Now, we won't sell a variety unless we've 3 years results with it, because, and particularly with maize, because as a crop, it's hugely influenced by the weather. So from our point of view, as I suppose screening material, this is not a good year. It's too kind. It's too kind to the varieties that maybe are just not good enough for Ireland. So we'll find that, look, they all do pretty well in a year like this year. What we're looking for is a variety that does really well in a bad year, and in a moderate year when things are difficult. And it can be an okay variety in a really good year. That's fine, providing that, because in a really good year like this year, look, they're all good anyway. And so you can have, look, something that's in the middle of the pack there, which has had a fabulous performance, but if it's at the top of the pile in a bad year, that's what we're looking for. And that's what, like, we have LG 31207 is our main variety for the plastic market, and Emmeline is a sister variety that, and it's just coming to market. That's what they are. They're reliable, they're really good in difficult conditions. The last 2 years were tricky enough, really good, top of the pile. And this year they're going to do really, really well. So that's what we're trying to find. And we're just looking for the same thing in our uncovered trial down further. And okay, like what's going to influence it? The weather is the biggest factor in terms of a farmer's crop, but also things like the sowing date. And this year people got a chance to sow it in time. The nutrition, it's a high yield crop. It needs to be fed properly. And then the field environment. So, like, we'd always say the 2 most important things are, well, the weather and the site. And the site, this site's perfect, but like once you go above, say, maybe 100 or 150 feet over sea level, starting to ask a few questions then. If you have a 200 feet over sea level and you're north facing and maybe exposed, yeah, it's definitely pushing the boundaries of maize then, yeah.
We definitely saw in 2024, last harvest, we had a really wet spring. We had a really wet May, and then we were all thinking it was going to be a nice, kind, warm summer after that, and it never came. June was dry but
Cold.
extremely cold. There was a load of, crops that really struggled during that weather. Like so, and like you're right, the trials last year on the other side of Cove Island would have been more valuable as regards teak tough data
Yeah.
of consistent varieties that will really do and discuss. We test all these cobs. They're all so before we harvest them, we take samples and they're all tested for dry matter and starch.
Well, yeah. So before harvest, so what we're interested in, I suppose the most important data is what you get when you harvest. We want to know how does it yield, and we also want to know. We take a sample then at harvest, and we'll send that to FBA labs in Cappoquin, and they'll test the dry matter content, and they'll test the starch content. And so that combined with the fresh yield, that gives us the dry matter yield, we have the starch yield, and we know how all the varieties perform relative to one another. The other assessments we'll do is we'll go through and we'll measure everything. We look at, like, in the field, we can find things that will make us rule a variety out. We'll say, look, no, not good enough. It doesn't stand properly. It's too prone to falling. It doesn't have suitable cobs. It's not suitable. It's just not fitting. So we can knock varieties on the head in the field, and they might even do okay in the yield performance afterwards. But for one reason or another, we can knock them on the head and say not suitable. Before harvest, we'll go through and we'll take a look at the cob size, the cob presentation on the plant, the maturity in terms of how they're all in comparison to one another, what kind of leaf bulk they have, and the greenness, how well. We want a variety to stay green up to harvest and have this super cob and green as well. And okay, this is, Joe has handed me my measuring stick, so look, we'll go through and we'll measure everything. And what I measure from our own trials point of view, I measure into where the last leaf joins the stem. So this variety is 2.4. Okay, so probably 2.4, yeah, 2.5 on average, I'd be giving this a height of. And it's not a trait on the recommended list anymore, but I think it's important because, look, you want a variety to, obviously it has to yield well and it has to have the right starch, but I also want it to look well. I want varieties to, to look like they are, like they analyse, so that a farmer can see, because not every farmer is going to have a weighbridge. He wants to see, look, I have a good crop, it's a good big tall crop, and it's bulky. Yeah.
Proud looking crop.
Yeah.
No, fair play. Yeah, no, this will be harvested this roughly when do you reckon these trials will be harvested, Dave?
Yeah, so some of the earlier maturing ones under plastic here, they're actually ready to harvest now. So as I said, we've ambition over here, and unfortunately in this site, there are badgers nearby. So badgers love maize, and they're the best of all at picking out the ones that are most mature. So our ambition plot over here is actually almost flattened at this stage, and the rest are okay. So we're going to fence it now in the next couple of days with an electric fence. Two electric fence wires, 6 inches and 12 inches off the ground, and that should stop that. But I expect we'll be harvesting here. We'll wait for the more mainstream varieties to be ready. So I'm talking about 2 weeks or 3 weeks time, I expect we'll harvest here. Yeah. And we'll harvest a lot then at that stage. And okay, we have replicated trials. So there's about 20 varieties here under plastic, and they're all here twice. And we have about 30 without plastic, and they're all here twice.
And talk about the weighing system you have for your plots.
Yeah, so a number of years ago we invested in essentially a grain trailer, a Smith trailer, and we've got weigh cells underneath. So what we can do is we're in here, we're harvesting. I suppose we want plots that reflect what will happen when these are grown on a farm. So we have 6 rows per plot. So I'm in the middle of the plot here. So these 6 rows are all this plot, and we use a 6-row harvester, a conventional 6-row harvester. He blows the contents of the plot into the trailer, and we take the weight. And as it's being blown in, we're taking a sample, a good average sample of what's been blown in. We take the fresh weights. Once he has that one done and the weight written down, we can move on to the next plot, and over and back until the trailer's full, and he can go off and empty, and we can come back and do the same thing again. And we also use that same trailer then for harvesting our beet trial. Yeah. So it has certainly made the job far, I suppose, easier, and the day isn't as long when you have the right equipment. Yeah. So in terms of varieties for under plastic, we have 3. And I know, okay, we have 20 varieties here that are in trial. And in some cases, many of those we're looking for the first year or the second year, and we're just trying to decide if they're good enough for Ireland. But The three varieties that are either in the market or coming to market are, look, LG 31207 has been our mainstay variety for the last couple of years. And this one, Emmeline, is in the market this year. There's a certain amount of seed out there. And we have another one called Justice that's coming along. So as you can see with Emmeline, well, I should mention it's in its third year of recommended list trials. So when the new plastic came along in 2022-23, the Department of Agriculture essentially stopped recommended list trials, or at least they wouldn't use the data from the old plastic. So there's been no recommended list in 24 or 25. And now they've had, when they have 3 years with the new plastic, there'll be a recommended list again in 2026. Emmeline is eligible to get on that list and will get on it. It's a good solid variety. It's a sister variety to LG 31207. It's a bit earlier, 4, 5, 6 days earlier. Similar yield and a little bit better in starch. And certainly we're expecting it to be on the list. As you can see, look, it's a fine, tall plant. Here in the field, it's 2.5 meters tall, and similar again to some of the other high performing varieties here. Super cobs, I just took this one off this plant here, as you can see here, and they're very well filled. And we'll say with a cob of that bulk and that well filled appearance, it's definitely going to be 55 or 60% of the dry matter of that plant. And then just looking in a bit more detail at the cob, as you can see, look, it's a very good presentation of grains. In terms of maturity, this is a bit of liquid material still at the front of it, so it's probably going to be another couple of weeks before it's ready for harvest. So again, look, Emmeline, there will be more of it in the market next year, and I expect it'll be on the recommended list with a very good performance.
So we're standing beside Goldcrop's flagship covered variety, LG 31207. So this would have been in the marketplace for the last 3 or 4 years, has performed really consistently. It's our biggest selling covered variety. It's medium maturity, so it did have a very good year in 2024 in a challenging year for maize. It ripened quite early compared to other varieties on the market which didn't reach maturity. It has super cobs and super yield. So just looking at the height, this variety is roughly about 2.6 meters high. So you can see it's very much a standout variety for us. The cobs look super. There's an interesting trait that this variety has, is that there's a reddish tinge on the cobs. So it's actually a small level of antioxidant, which might have a benefit and could have a benefit at feed out when you're feeding your maize at the wall pit face during the winter months. So you can see as I break the cob, there's super cobs there. It's slightly later than the Emmeline, so I'm expecting, yeah, there's a bit of juice there. So, but the corns look fabulous, and obviously that tinge is in it as well, the red tinge. So no, this is definitely our best-selling covered variety, and it's done really well on farm last 3 or 4 years. A lot of farmers and merchants come back for it, like, which is a great sign. So no, definitely one, and obviously it should be recommended for the recommended list in 2026, all going well.
Yeah, so we're now looking at Saxon grown uncovered, and again, it's a similar maturity to Ambition. There's been a good bit of this variety in the market for the last 2 years. Again, medium maturity. It's the highest yielding variety on the recommended list. So it was on the recommended list for the first time in 2025, and it's 107 for yield. In terms of starch, it's lower than Ambition, but in terms of starch yield, it's similar. So it's 91% starch on the recommended list. With a yield of 107, it gives you a super, I suppose, fresh yield and also very high quality. In terms of the crop here, and again, look, this year's an exceptional year, but this is 2.5 meters tall. You can see, like, look, it's a real strong, bulky crop. And in terms of the cobs and in terms of maturity, and again, look, in an uncovered year at the date that we have, when you have a variety at, look, it's just, yeah, very, look, it's pretty dry. There's a small bit of liquid on the top of the cob. So you would say, look, that in a perfect world, it's ready to cut in probably a week's time. Obviously, most of the crop here on the site is under plastic, so the rest of the crop's ready to cut. So that's Saxon. Again, we expect very high performance from the crops that are out the country this year, and we expect big demand again in springtime for this variety.
I suppose this variety, Ambition, it doesn't need any introduction. It's been a market leader in maize in the open for the last 10 years. I suppose looking at the cobs, there's super cobs in it. It's early variety with great starch. So you can see there's no juice coming out of that. So that's tiny bit, but it's absolutely perfect for harvest. Looking at the height of the crop, really proud tall crop, 2.4 meters tall. So yeah, look, Ambition, it's been our quickest variety to sell out the last 6 or 7 years, and that tells its own story. Farmers love it, contractors love it, end users, beef and dairy farms love it as well. So it feeds well, super quality, and I suppose it can be grown under plastic as well, so it's a dual purpose variety. So that's Ambition, and there'll be plenty of it available in spring 2026. So we're here, the next variety we have is Foxtrot. So looking at the plot, you can see super proud crop, extremely tall, standing very well. So it's roughly 2.5 meters high, which is exceptional for maize in the open. Just briefly on Foxtrot, it's been available in Goldcrop for the last 2 or 3 years. Farmers really come back for it. It's higher yielding than Ambition. We're hoping it's done 2 years of trials with the recommended list. So we're hoping it'll get on the recommended list next year. A yield of 106, which is 6% over the average last year, which is a super yield. It's medium maturity. So look, that's Foxtrot, and it'll be available spring 2026 from Goldcrop. So we're going to discuss here the variety Duke. So this variety was first available this spring 2025. So it's a new offering from Goldcrop, slightly earlier. It gives farmers who mightn't have grown maize before, it's an insurance policy. It's a week earlier than other varieties such as Ambition. So it's ideal for moderate sites. It's in the 3rd year of recommended list trial. So the big advantage of this variety is starch quality. So Ambition has been a market leader for years. It's the variety that sells out first every year in Goldcrop. Duke has higher starch than Ambition, which we haven't had a variety with higher starch than Ambition ever. Yield is slightly lower, but that's because it's earlier. While we're here, we may as well have a look at the height of the crop. So this crop is this crop is in the open. So roughly 2.4 meters high, which is an exceptional height for a crop in the open. I suppose looking at the cobs, it's been you can hear the harvester behind me maybe. So look, you can see Duke is after coming in. You can see the redness there. I'll get a few grains. So you can see it's just ready for harvest. And there's good hard cobs there. You can see the flint marks on the side here. So no, look, it'll make a super variety and a great prospect for Goldcrop going forward.